That means we're about ready.
Okay.
And on the way.
We're glad to welcome Reverend Mark Gooden as our speaker.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Barb. Well, Barb and I have known each other a long time, and it's just great to be back with her. Let me give you a little information of who I am. I was in ministry for 40 years, served in small churches, medium-sized, large churches, and I told somebody at the table I retired June the 30th and started 2 years ago, well, about 18 months ago, started July the 7th with the foundation. So I failed at retirement. I didn't do very well with it. The foundation is loosely connected with the Holston Conference. We are there, but we have our own board of directors, so we are with them, but we have our own board of directors and mission. Our mission is really to help promote generosity and demonstrate that through our faithful stewardship. I don't know if y'all know, your foundation this year has given away $250,000 in grants all across the conference. And there's for camp and community. I was with a group in Duffield. They gave backpacks out to 150 kids. There was a low-income housing unit next to the church. For years, the church just closed its eyes to that. And one day, somebody came up with a brilliant idea. They said, "Well, let's open our doors and invite those children for backpack supplies." And over the past few years, they've had 150 kids that have come through there. They get backpack supplies, they get Bibles, they get all kinds of things. So that's one of the things that I would say we've been doing this since June, of going to different churches and passing out grants, and those that were given grants. There are fuel packs. My home church at Hickson, they give out 700 fuel packs every week to children in the community. You know, fuel packs go home on the weekends. You have a weekend. So they give out 700 every week to 16 area schools. So that's how your foundation is involved in some of those things. 135,000 in scholarships. Can everybody hear me okay? I can raise my volume if you need to.
I just wasn't sure what a fuel pack was.
Yeah, ask a question, just raise your hand. It won't bother me a bit.
Thank you for asking.
That's right. A fuel pack is where you take food home on the weekends for them.
Snack in a backpack. Some places call it snack in a
So
backpack.
it's not to keep them warm.
No. Well, it can be. It can keep their stomach warm.
That's right.
As long as you have a full stomach, you stay pretty warm, feel pretty warm sometimes with that. $135,000 in scholarships. That's pretty impressive. I told the group I was given a scholarship in seminary that made a big difference. I won't go into that story, but these scholarships make a difference. $200,000 in overseas missions. Now, this is from your foundation this year. I'm going to let you know a little secret. This won't go out for tomorrow, but tomorrow they're voting on, the board of directors is voting on another mission emphasis for the marginalized. And there's going to be a significant amount of money that will go out to marginalized ministries over the next year. So I wish I had a bottle of water for you, but I've already drunk out of it, so you won't that along the way. But
I just swallowed it wrong.
Okay, all right. The worst thing to do when you're preaching, I'm going to tell you, is I get sidetracked pretty easy. Is when you get up there and you start coughing during a funeral, and you don't have any water around, so you're trying to muffle it, and you're trying to hold it, and it gets worse. The more you try to muffle it, the worse it gets, and everything. And you break out in sweat and all this kind of stuff and all that. We also have professional funds that we invest in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. Work with churches to promote and establish endowments. My responsibility is to work with folks that establish endowments. I go around and talk to individuals or to groups, and I will talk about some of those. We talk about establishing legacy gifts for your favorite ministry. We have a provide and protect presentation we make. I'm mainly focusing on generosity tonight. I know you'll have a Mark Flynn coming Sunday. We help donors, and I'll talk about this a little bit more just to give you an idea, though. Donor advised funds. Anybody aware of what those are? They're a big thing now. That people can set up their own funds, and they advise the foundation or the group they work with. They advise the foundation on where they want those ministries to be supported. It's generational. You have your family can help make, your kids, your grandkids can help make decisions once a year on where those funds go. I was talking to Brenda today, our accounts manager. There was a man that had a donor advised fund for years. Now his son has taken over a donor advised fund, and he's getting his children and grandchildren to help decide where those funds go once a year. And I think those are wonderful things. Charitable gift annuities, there's all kind of things like that. Now I've got some handouts I'll give you. There's some things over there. Those books are free. The pens are free. Pens make a great Christmas gift. Books, if you have somebody that want to scare them about provide, protect in their stocking, that might be all right too along the way. When you think about generosity, it's almost 7 o'clock, so I know you are getting weary, and this program is a little bit different than what I usually do, and I talked to Barbara, and I think this is what we want to do. But who taught you about generosity? I don't want to do all the talking, but who taught you about generosity? Anybody? Your mother. How so? How did she teach you about generosity?
Just be good to other people and share what you got.
Share what you got. Yeah. Anybody else?
Mine didn't talk to me about it, but I watched her.
Right.
I knew what to do because of her and her sisters, and they were always taking dinners for people or things of that nature. We
Right.
didn't deal in money, but in giving.
Giving. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is generosity and.
Right, because it costs money to make those meals too, though.
Sure
Right?
does.
It does.
Yeah,
It just
so-
don't come easily sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing was, for tithing here, it was very, good of, folks that, I can't think, I'm not good at remembering words, the finance committee, put out a thing on how you can start here and go up
Right,
the ladder.
right,
And we did that.
Yeah.
And it was marvelous.
right.
So that
Step
taught us
towards
a lot.
tithing.
Yeah, steps toward tithing.
Yeah, we are one of those success stories.
I'm sorry.
We are one of those success stories.
Yeah. Well, I had a person come into my office and wanted to set up an endowment. Putting $1,000 a month to help children in Africa that go to African University. Also help with respite care for senior adults. There was 2 more backpacks, and I think the other one was camping ministries. But here's what he said. He said, I lived with the fear of not having enough, and now I no longer live with that fear. And I want to do something because God has blessed me, God has been generous to me, and I no longer live with that fear of not having enough. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, about what is enough, and look at some of that along the way. Anytime, if you have a question along the way, stop me. Anybody else? Anything? Somebody modeled generosity for you? Anybody?
My parents.
Parents?
I was raised a Baptist.
There you
And
go.
so-
Enough said.
There was no choice. You gave that money.
Right. Enough said, wasn't it, along the way? Gave that money. All right. Anybody else? So when you think about generosity, how would you define generosity then? We talk about it and we assume everybody knows, but how would you define generosity? Anybody?
I think it comes from the heart.
Yeah?
Yeah, because you know that what you have, you can at least share.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I think that comes from the heart.
I think it comes from faith.
Hmm?
The Lord will provide, so.
Right.
My mother and I differ on that. She doesn't want me to spend so much money or, give things. She said, you might need that money.
Right.
Well, maybe I will, but.
Right.
We're a little different on that.
Right.
She's very generous, but she's very conservative too. I'm not as conservative. I try not to let it worry me.
Right. If somebody came up to you in the elevator and they say, "Hey, I got to get to the next floor. What can you tell me about generosity? What does it mean to you? What would you say to them?
Thinking of others.
Thinking of others. You're almost to the second floor. What else would you say? Anything?
God has given us everything,
Yeah.
and that we're called upon to return a portion of that
Right.
in response
In
to
response
what He's
to
done
that.
for us.
In response to that, not called to be hoarders. Hoarding, keep it for yourself along the way. Okay. Anything else?
Well, you can never pay for what you've gotten.
Right.
In Christianity.
Right.
There's not
Give-
enough money to pay for it.
Is gift given?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other things on generosity?
Well, I had somebody say to me one time, said they never seen a hearse with a U-Haul on it.
Right. Right.
You can't take it with you, so.
Yeah. Well,
Share it.
I mean, sometimes we don't see the people who benefit from our
Right.
tithes or offerings, but sometimes we're allowed to see how it might improve somebody's life.
Along the way. Generous of your time, generous, it's all those things. Think that I realized this when my father's mother died. He decided to have a yard sale. And we got down to the last box, and there were all these pots and pans in there, and the guy offered us $25 for them. Now, he's a coach. He was hard. We didn't mess with him. He didn't ever cry. He started sobbing, and he said, that is all that's $25 is all that is worth. After I watched her cook and do and make and say, and the thing is, you know what they're going to do with your stuff? I hate to tell you. You know what they're going to do with your stuff that you treasure?
Resell it.
They're going to put it in a box and put $10 on it, or they're going to send it to Goodwill. For the most part, really. Right? Yes, no?
Yeah.
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 I've seen it happen too many times. What we thought was important, what we thought were valuable, your kids are not, or your whoever is not going to look at that same way and say, gosh, we got to keep that. There are things that they will keep, but there's things they're going to put in a box and say, okay, we don't need that, because they got their own stuff. Have you noticed how many storage units have popped up over the last few years?
Yeah.
Why do they do that?
People have too much stuff.
Well, you put stuff in there.
Too much stuff.
You put stuff in there so you can buy more stuff, right?
Yeah.
Stuff adds more stuff to it. And so generosity is oftentimes looking and simplifying, of saying, I have enough. And you and I have to decide what enough is. I can't answer that for you. Often when we talk about endowments or we talk about things, people have to decide. When we talk with folks about endowments, you need to have enough for yourself. You need to have enough for your family. But do you have enough that you can also share and give to others? I had a lady a person that came to me. I spoke at a senior adult thing, and they came up and got me out of a meeting that I was grateful for in some ways. But she just sat there and talked the whole time. She said, I want to establish an endowment for children. And she said, here's her words: I have enough. I've made sure my family has enough. But now I want to make sure that a gift will come on living long after I've died, so that children who I've served throughout, I won't tell you what she did, but who I've served will have enough to live long after I've died. And there's a gift. Her gift will continue to give a significant amount of money to children forever. And I think that deciding what's enough is what you and I have to decide. So what keeps people from being generous? What keeps people from being generous?
Yeah, but what if I need it later?
What if you don't have enough? That's what we talked about. What else? What else keeps people from being generous? I'm gonna put a couple of these down. See, Barbara won't ever ask me back, so this is the only time I'm here.
No.
Is it a lack of trust sometimes in God? If we're being honest with
I
ourselves,
think it is.
if we're being, it's sometimes a lack of trust in God. Yes, no?
Yes.
We're gonna put it on the board then, all right?
Yes. Why would you give? Has God put you to that? If you don't believe that God will replace
Yeah, but I trust regardless of what I do.
What was the question? What was the question?
The question is, sometimes people are not generous because they have a lack of trust in God.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what we're saying. Not everybody, but sometimes there's a lack of trust.
That's the core of it.
Yeah, yeah. Why are people not generous in other ways? What are some other things? Greed. Don't have enough. Did you ask John Rockefeller how much more money he had? You know what he said? What did he say?
Not enough.
Just a little more. I need just a little more. And I think that's it's a greed sometimes, or just a little more. There's another one. I think there's a lack of, today in this world that we're living in, there's a lack of trust in organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes, yes.
I'm going to put that on you probably won't be able to read what I write anyway.
I think the older you get, there's the fear of you living longer than the money you've got.
Right.
And you have to be very careful and watch that, and be savvy about handling it too, because nowadays you don't know, and everything is so out of pocket, expensive. Yes.
Fear of outliving your money. It's just an honest response. I've got to make sure that I have enough to live. I don't want to. My grandmother used to say, "What? I don't want to be what?
A burden.
A burden, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a burden.
And I don't want to live with my kids.
Can we change the recording right there? All right.
Maybe a lack of empathy for others, maybe?
Yeah, when I say a lack of trust up here, it offends people. Don't let it offend. It's not to get to a point of being generous. You have to learn about generosity, and sometimes we haven't done a good job of teaching people how to tithe or to do whatever. It's sometimes the church's fault, not Barbara's. It's sometimes the church's fault. I did it for 40 years. We don't teach people because we don't talk about what?
Money.
You have convinced us not to talk about money. You convinced us as preachers we don't talk about money. Now Baptist church did, but we in the Methodist church for a long time, you don't talk about money because it's taboo. Everybody else is talking about it, right? But we don't talk about that. Well, okay. So what we've done is we haven't taught people to trust in that reality. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying that's sometimes reason people aren't generous. Sometimes we're not aware of that. Jesus said, remember Matthew 6:19-21, where your heart is where your treasure is. So think about that and think about some of those things. Sometimes we forget that God has blessed us. Remember what John Wesley said this: we are not at liberty to use what God has lodged in our hands as we please, but as God pleases. We have no right to dispose of anything we have but according to His will, seeing that we are not proprietors of any of these things. I mentioned the word gift a minute ago. Some people have a problem giving in because they're entitled.
Oh, yeah.
This is mine. I got it. I made it. And I'm going to keep it. Forgetting all about what God has done, the talents, the resources, the health, the energy, all those things that God has given. There's sometimes a problem with that. It is sometimes, I think the other thing, and that's what we're going to talk about for a few minutes, sometimes there's a lack of an understanding of what is available. Right? There's a lack of understanding of what assets are available. Now, see, they don't let me out of the office much, but I brought you a little illustration tonight. Barbara wanted to ask if I wanted to use videos and everything. I said, I'm past videos and all those things anymore. PowerPoint presentations. I just bring children's sermons in. How about that? I've got my eggs all in one basket here. Here's what the church asked for. Here's what the church asked for. You know what's in this basket? See that? Deposits, right? They asked for savings. They asked for checking. They asked for cash. That's what the church usually asks. When people look at, and people come up to us and the preachers, they say to anybody else, I don't have enough. I'm on a fixed income. I'm on retirement. I have everything tied up in my business. It's all true, right? So what we do is we only talk about the cash, the things in the bank, the things in savings, the things that are easy to reach. But think about this. This is what's in the other basket. What's in this other basket? What are things that are in this basket?
All the things we blow money on.
Could be all the things you blow money on.
Well, or to exist, home,
Your home,
food, no, the whole
Right.
schmeal.
the whole meal, right? What else is in that bag? I want to share with them. What else is in there?
Is church in there?
Mm-hmm.
401ks.
401ks, retirement funds. You've got a required minimum distribution when you turn 73. What are you doing with it? Just reinvesting, or is that a way that you could help fund an endowment at some point? Give a certain amount of your $10,000 a year for 3 or 4 years, and you have an endowment set up that will help with the building maintenance of this church or something. I'm not telling you what to do. You could set up a mission endowment and say, have $10,000 here, then add 10,000, add 10,000, add 10,000. There's 401ks. There's I'm not going to share. What other things are there?
Annuities. Annuities.
Annuities. There's all kinds of news there. Life insurance.
Yeah.
Thought about that. If you got enough life insurance, give ownership of your life insurance to the church, and they get the benefit after you're dead in some kind of endowment. Or you can set up. I like this idea. If you can give your life insurance to the church, and we talked about it in a meeting before. But if you pay the premiums, you get a tax deduction. If you can go ahead and continue to pay the premiums on it and get a tax deduction. So there's life insurance. What else is there that are in these groups here? Anything? So you're thinking about those things that are outside. Real estate. Real estate's in here. Tangible gifts. When you think about tangible gifts, what are tangible gifts?
Houses, property.
House, land.
Could be, well, you could, there are charitable remainder trusts. You can sell property and receive money and then give it to charity. There's one person I know of that has a bunch of paintings, and they're very valuable. You could give those to the church. What's your children going to do with them? They're going to put them in them. They're not going to sell them, but they're going to put them in their closet somewhere, probably. Some of that. You have bonds. I had a person the other day that came and wanted to give. I don't think they'll mind sharing this. I won't tell him the name, but $50,000 in bonds. They set up an endowment, and what's that endowment go toward? It goes toward building and maintenance at their church. And what they gave for is they're hoping that somebody else will join them in building that endowment up to where it can be self-sufficient, where you can pay for 28 air conditioning units without going to the congregation. And the reason they did this is why? Not so the church can say, oh, look at how much more money we saved, so the church can give more to missions and ministries. That was one of the stipulations of the endowment, that they wanted the church to be able to take that money out of the budget and use that money for missions and ministries, and use that endowment to set up other funding. When I think you think about this roof, this building's been here. What did we say? 1961, 62. It's sort of like some of us when we get older, it needs a little more maintenance, right? It just happens that way, right? And if you want to take care of it, then you'll have to think about those kind of things like that. Now, the thing that I've always struggled with, a pastor, what people would say was, well, if you set up these things, then you're taking away from the general church budget. No, I'm asking you not to get into your little stuff here. I'm asking you to think creatively about your generosity somewhere else. There are other things out there. The thing that happens is that people say, I can't do this and that. You're right. It's all true. But there are things that we can do. If you have a business that you're selling, the big thing for boomers right now, and some of y'all are a little bit older than boomer generation. I'm on the,
I resemble that.
And some younger, some
I'm on
younger.
the end. I'm on the back end of the. I'm one of the last of the boomer generation. I was born in '59. But the big thing for the boomer generation is what? Property. They have property to sell, property to give away. There's a lot of interest in property. So you think about those kind of things. We did talk about retirement accounts, but setting up charitable gift annuities. I mean, there's all kind of options. You can't give creatively if you're not thinking creatively. You have to think, if I really want to be generous, then what is it I can do to help this church or help my favorite ministry in that regard? Now, so let me stop there. Anybody have a question or anything? Thought about that? There are other things in there. You got your home. If you have another home, you could sell you could make a trust and live in your home until you die, and then the money would go to the church. You could have a bargain sale of your home, and there's just all kind of options out there of property that you can use if that's something that you wanted to do. Now, I will say this, and I told the group they are very passionate about this. One thing, the reason I went to work for the foundation. After 40 years of ministry, I worked myself to death, and I really I've neglected my family more than I should have, and there was harm in that from what I did. Our son ended up with dealing with some real issues during COVID. Here I was trying to run a big church, and nobody was there, and he was trying to commit suicide. And I thought about a lot of those things that you really start thinking about what really is important. And it's relationship. It's not all the other stuff that we always worry about. And all that mattered was that we had to take some of our stuff, and our retirement stuff, and take care of him. And that's, I understand that you sometimes have to do those kind of things. And y'all don't know me from Adam. My life's pretty much an open book. But the reason I went to work for the foundation is all I have is my integrity. That's all I have. I went to work for the foundation because I believe that they try their best to make sure you are taken care of as a people. And just as I tried to take care of my son, and he trusted us to try to help him in his worst situation, I've seen senior adults taken advantage of, and it makes me so mad and so irritated. It's not right. It's not just. And what we would do is come alongside, if you were ever interested in leaving a gift in your will, we come on, hey, here's your options. Here's the things to think about. Where's God moving you, nudging you? What's your favorite ministry? Tell me your story. What those kind of things like that. And it all comes down to this idea of trust. I'm so tired of all this suspicion that's always around and all the stuff that we have created when we should be finding folks that we can trust and look at. So that's where some of that comes in with these assets, is looking. I had I guess this goes back to my great aunt. She lived in Florida. She was widowed. One of these fly-by-night preachers came and talked to her and told her that God was telling him to tell her that she needed to invest her whole property in the church, and she left the whole property in the church to her will, and she was taken advantage of. you can guilt folks into doing what God wants them to do.
Was it not a legitimate church then?
It was I'm not sure if it was legitimate. I don't know if he was legitimate as a pastor, but I think that there's that thing that we have to always be careful that we keep enough. But folks, sometimes we've got to the point where we live with so much security that we don't know what enough is. And we've got to start looking carefully at that and saying, this is enough. I have enough now. Now what can I do to help leave a legacy? Paul asks this, our president asks this question a lot, is our legacy only leaving our investments to our children, or do we want to give something that lasts on after this that for other groups and people? Let me stop there. Anybody have a question? Anything you want to ask about? Anything you have a question about? This is the one guy right there. I love that. This is the guy saying, I don't have the cash right now. Everything is tied up in business. Maybe I'll leave a gift in my will. I have so much money. I might really live a long time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what they're talking about is coming from here. It's all the stuff that comes out of the cash when you've got other things in there that can work in that regard. Okay. Other things? Anybody have a question? Question for me? We've got quite a few minutes. Okay. We'll move on. I'm sorry. Anybody anything? All right. Let me look here and make sure that we covered what I wanted to cover there. All right. Yeah. Here we go.
I will say, you mentioned when you started about the foundation. In recent years, our foundation has become much more intentional about being in mission. Before, we trusted them and they were good investors, good stewards and all. But in recent years, we've seen the foundation take an active part in missions. And I know during the pandemic, when I was serving at Gatlinburg, we did receive a grant from the foundation to continue our food pantry, our food ministry. So I saw that firsthand how the employees of our foundation are really setting a good example personally and together as a foundation. I think that's really it's raised my perception. I always trusted the foundation,
Right.
but now I feel even more proud of the people that are keeping stewardship over our endowments.
And modeling that generosity. Yeah. I met with a young adult couple the other day, they're a clergy couple, and they are leaving 10% of their will to the foundation to use for local churches and ministries. It's something for you to think about, to leave a percentage of, I'm going to say it anyway. Y'all can run me off. That's okay. Or just don't write an evaluation about me.
No, you're fine.
I told this to the group that we met earlier, but you got athletic groups asking for your money. You got universities asking for your money. And you've got this group and that group. And we leave money to those people, to those groups in our will. But the church that's been there for your baptisms, for your funerals, for your marriages, for your confirmation, for your discipleship, for your transformation, for your mission outreach, for all those things, we don't even think about it. We don't think about it. And so I think that there's sometimes I got over the habit. I got over the awkwardness of asking people for money. I just did. I hate to tell you this, but Jesus asked for money he talked about money all the time. He didn't ask for it. He just look at that widow there. She's doing that. Look at how she's taking care of her money. where's your treasure at? I don't know where that is. And, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. He was constantly talking. Why was he talking about money? Because money is the thing that often keeps us from living in a life of faith that we need to live.
And during his time of that, there really wasn't money until about that time. People used to barter.
Barter with everything.
Yeah, so he had to teach.
He had to teach them what he was doing with. But think about, leaving a gift in your will, leaving a bequest, something that you leave for another person. Bernie Hines, have to listen to this story again, but I was at Lenore City for 13 years, relocated to church, and a lady that she lived by herself, was never married, drove the same car for 13 years, and she came up to me and said, I want to leave a gift in my will, and they moved me before I had a chance to talk to her. She went ahead with that, and after she died, she left $250,000 in an endowment to that church. They bought 100, and she's been dead about 10 years now. This year, every year, they fund Vacation Bible School through that gift. They bought 100 pair of shoes this last year for children from that endowment. Now, there's something about leaving something that will live on. My wife and I have talked. I will tell you all this. I don't tell everybody. We've set up an endowment, and are still continuing to contribute to that. I hate to ask people to do what I'm not willing to do myself in that regard. I'm still toying with the idea of leaving the life insurance to the foundation. I haven't thought about that yet. I don't. We've got stuff covered through the conference that deals with some of that. So there's some things that look at that we may be doing in that. Jack Green set up. Anybody know Jack Green? Kingsport. Set up an endowment for margin for children on the margin had C averages. They're good students, but they don't often get looked at for scholarships. They're lower average. So he wanted to set up an average, and in 1996 he invested $5,000. You know how he pays for that endowment? He collects cans. He's been doing it since 1996. Every Monday, he'll take his old truck and he'll go out and collect cans. Do you know how much is in that endowment now? Over $100,000. Because he said, instead of, I don't know what I can do, he says, I can do this. I can be creative in this way. I can fund this ministry in this way. And so he's collected cans since 1996. You know how old he is now? 95. He's still collecting cans. And that there are so many lives that have been changed by his generosity. There are so many ways that you and I can be generous if we just decide that's what we want to do, and it's how we want to do it. So that's where we, talked to Barbara, talked to me along the way. I've left some cards over there. There's some information over there. Talk to me along the way, and we'll be glad to do that. Anybody have a question? We can talk about a few other things. I think that that most of what I wanted to cover, I think it's close to the time anyway. I don't want to run you off. We got a little bit of time. Anybody have a question for me? Anything you want to ask about? I can talk a little bit about wills and do those kind of things. We can do that along the way too.
Yeah.
Anything? Here's information over there about what the foundation does. There's this sheet here, Understanding Planned Giving, is a great thing to talk about if you want to look at. Planned giving, you save on taxes, but it also gives you money along the way. And it helps support three things. It helps support your favorite ministry or your church. So when you think about those ideas of planned giving, those are the things that it does. I wanted to look at this last page here and see if there's anything. Great. This book here, if you're thinking about wills, and I usually spend about an hour and a half on wills, so I'll do it in 5 minutes. This is a great book. Just a great book. take it to somebody. Take it to a friend, keep it with family. There's all kind of about living trust, wills, retirement plans, what to do with property, planning your senior care, all that kind of stuff like there. So those are excellent books there, and they're free. So take them with you, and work with that. Let's talk about wills. 60% of people in the United States don't have wills.
We don't. We just haven't gotten to it. We
So
started several times.
that's the thing that people. That's one of the reasons that people don't have. Just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah.
So somebody will decide, if you have children, somebody will decide who will take care of your children. It may be Uncle Joe that has no interest in your children.
Right.
Somebody will decide what to do with your property. I told the group earlier, I had a pastor talk to me. There was this person that for 30 years was the main giver of that church. I mean, he was a millionaire, a little up in the millions, not just a millionaire. He died without a will. Pastor knew that man would have wanted some of his money to go to support the church. And doesn't have to have it all, but he thought that he would know that because he was there constantly, faithfully keeping that church. The heir, who was a brother, did not go to church. So guess what happened to that money that was left over? None of it ever received by the
Lawyers
church.
get a lot of it.
Huh?
Lawyers get a lot of it. That's what happened to our Aunt Bill.
Sometimes.
She had a will and she had lots of money and lots of property and when it got down to her dad, who was the last in line to get it,
Right.
he got like $2,000.
Yeah.
She was a very wealthy woman.
Yeah.
So
It goes in a different direction with that.
it does happen.
It does. You have families fuss over stuff.
Yes.
People can't be trusted when it comes to money. They just lose their mind.
When you don't have a will, what you're doing with a will is you're doing the most loving thing for your family.
Exactly.
Barbara and I don't even have to ask her. I've seen it. I know there was a matriarch of a church. I won't tell you which church. Won't tell you where. This beautiful woman had died, and her family was already fussing. With her body hadn't even been cold yet. We're already fussing over her assets in her living room. And so what we do when we don't have a will is that we create chaos if we're not careful. I'm sorry, but we do.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, I know. And it's not you. That's 60% of the folks around don't do that. So you have to think about what you want to do that, and how you want to use that to guard your estate, but also to help your family in some way with that. That's where your estate planning comes in, and that's where all that comes in to deal with those kind of things. I've got a whole program I can come and talk to you about sometime. If you want to talk about wills, we certainly can do that along the way. But it is important. Judy and I just redid our will. You need to do your will about every 3 to 5 years. Redo it because things change.
Yeah.
Your property changes. You may have grandchildren come along. You have somebody may want to put a cell tower on your property. Imagine that. And you're going, okay, that's not in my will. I got to get that in my will. You have different things come along and different things to happen with that along the way. So there's some things to think about with that will in that regard. The other, I would think, that is with the will, and I'm running through this real quickly, is when you look at what you're doing with your will. I heard people say, what you mentioned earlier, well, it costs some money. Well, it does. But it costs a lot more money if you don't have a will sometimes.
It doesn't cost that much money.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
that's...
yeah. So what's according to how complicated your state
it can cost a little bit. It depends on how much your
Right.
estate is and how much you have in your property and everything with that.
Yep.
And it's important to, where do you keep your will? We talk about that kind of thing. Where do you keep your will? Anybody?
Safety
deposit box.
Had a guy, I want you to think about that, had a guy that put his will in a safety deposit box. You know what happened?
Burn. No?
No, it was at the bank, put it in a safety deposit bank. But he didn't tell his family which bank he put it in.
Yeah.
So what happens when you don't tell your family and you have it in a safety deposit box? What's the bank? Any bankers here? What's the bank saying? You're not touching this.
No, they won't let you open
I'm not
the drawer.
opening it. I'm not going to open this up.
Uh-uh.
They had to get a court order. Had to say who they were, prove who they were. They still had to go from bank to bank to bank to bank. They finally found his will. Right? There's some, I did put this in here. Excellent book. This tells you, your executor or whoever, where everything is.
That's a good.
One of the things we do with I think is important anymore with these wills. Does everybody know your passcodes?
Yeah.
Do they know how to get into this?
Yeah.
Do they know your passcode to get into this?
I don't have mine locked, so anybody get it.
Do they know your passwords for your financial records? Did they get into your computer? Can they get into all this stuff? If you haven't given permission on Facebook for your photos to be shared, they're gone. Unless you have to get a special, you have to go do this, and this to make it happen. But you can put a remembrance, page of remembrance, and they will give you access. But you cannot get access to all your loved ones' photographs if you don't have certain openings or certain agreements with that. There's all kind of things to consider with that digital executor. You think about it. Does somebody know how to get into everything that you have?
My mother has just like an acre of property in Florida that would probably just go under the radar, cause she's had it for years. We might just even forget about it, but it's just things like that,
Well, and there's different laws, and you go to different across state lines.
Yeah.
You have to deal with different things with that.
Mm-hmm.
So think about those things. This thing here talks about where all your papers are. When my dad was
It's a really good idea.
my dad was getting close to death, he just kept on over and over and over. This is here, and I kept on saying that. And I don't want to know.
I'll forget
And he says, you need to know, and I did. I needed to know with all that. Choose your executor. I'll close with that. Choosing your executor at 7:30, but I'll finish with a story. My dad was at Memorial Hospital in Chattanooga he was 85 years old, and they did surgery on him to remove bladder cancer, and they put a bag here, and then he ended up with 2 bags, 9-hour surgery. He spent 30 days in the hospital. I was the executor. I begged not to be. I'm the middle child. I'm not the oldest.
You're the peacemaker.
I guess, something like that. I don't know what it is. But he told me one day, he said, I want to go home. And I said, we'll get you home. He said, no, I'm tired. I want to go home. And we had talked about it. As the executor, I was supposed to carry out his wishes. And so doctor came in and had this great plan. He's 85 years old. He's been in the hospital for 30 days. He's worn out. He's tired. And he says, we got a new experimental drug treatment we're going to try. And I said, no, we're not doing that. My brother over here was really mad and upset with me because, we got to try it. And we got a sister over here saying, you're just going to let him die. And I said, no, I'm not going to let him die. I'm going to carry out his wishes. He's ready to go home. And so you have those dynamics. You better choose someone that you can trust that's going to carry out your wishes if you have an executor, that's going to do what you ask them to do and be there to carry out your wishes and do what you do. And then we all came together, and it was okay. But there is a part of that when you're carrying out your will, you're choosing your executor too. You're choosing that person that's going to speak for you and someone that will do what you want them to do with them. Hey, that's all I've got. I'm an introvert. People don't believe that I am. I don't like to talk in front of crowds a whole lot. I've done it for 40 years, but I've had to adjust to it. I don't talk out in groups. I will talk to somebody afterwards. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I'll be here and for a few minutes. Then I'm going to stop at Sonic and get me a drink and go home. But
Thank you for coming.
well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So, please pick up some materials. I don't want to take them home with me. All right? Very good. You can't have the eggs. The eggs stay here. The eggs stay with me.
Let me get one.
All right.
Oh, boy.
Thank you.
All right. Very good.
Can you get up, Luana?
I will, eventually.
I know.
Quick question.